It's time for an annual Advent alignment. Now, Advent invites us to refocus on what is real. Advent expands our expectations, it renews our hope, and it clarifies our purpose. Advent is a season on the Christian calendar. It means to anticipate what is coming. So Advent is a season of reflection, and it's an opportunity for realignment. And so the good news is the sermon message today is pretty simple. The bad news is, if you like visuals, there are none. So just enjoy that beautiful scene. Now, I like the concept of realignment. Realignment, in my mind, means getting the tires of my vehicle back in sync. Every wheel, every tire working together in optimum form. Now, when the wheels and the tires are balanced properly and aligned, you can get better mileage, a smoother ride, fewer problems. Realignment is necessary for every vehicle, even a bicycle, because we all hit bumps and rough spots along the way. Now, our vehicles work hard for us, and our hearts and our minds work hard for us as well. So Advent is a season that quietly comes around and reminds us it's time for that annual heart and mind realignment. So during the 4 Sundays of Advent, these are the 4 opportunities that I want to briefly introduce. Advent invites us to refocus on what is real, to expand our expectations, to renew our hope, and to clarify our purpose. So today is the first Sunday of Advent, and I want us to refocus on the reality of Jesus, Emmanuel, which means God with us. But we're going to do that by starting with the story of the Magi. Remember the 3 wise men? But we don't know if there were just 3, and I don't really know if they were all men, but the Magi. So, first, a few words of context about Advent. Advent is not Christmas, but it is the season of preparation for Christmas. Advent lasts for such a long time, as the girls read for us this morning. It lasts a long time because Christmas celebrates a mystery, and it takes time to get ready to get into a mystery. Now, Advent is older than Christmas. It's more ancient than Babylonian astrology. Advent brings together ancient prophecies and cosmic mysteries to announce the hope of nations, the end of suffering and injustice, and the restoration of all that is good and lovable in everything and everyone that ever existed. Now, wow, that feels pretty dramatic, right? So can we just pause for a second to recognize the enormity and the power of Advent? Remember I said Advent goes back before Christmas, before Babylonian astrology, like way before. And that's important. And so it stretches across the seasons. It stretches across empires, worldviews, and the starry night sky. It's a mysterious guiding light that goes back in time further than our minds can remember and reaches further into the future than our imaginations can take us. Just be still and think about that for a moment. Use your imagination. Today we sang about the three kings of the Orient who followed a star. It's a fascinating story that's shared only briefly in the Gospel of Matthew with just enough detail to capture our hearts and our imaginations. Three kings, we sing, from faraway lands, traveling for weeks, months, years, who knows? They were following a star. They were Magi, or astrologers, who studied the secrets of science, the hidden ways, the ancient prophecies. Their work was to discern the meaning of things. Their role was to interpret the times and the events, the rise and fall of nations, the forces of nature, the coming of kings, and the deeper spiritual realities that hold our fragile world together in this unexplainable mystery that we call life on earth. And sometimes we just take it so completely for granted. Now, how do Magi follow a star? How does anyone follow a star? I said last night I was in Colonia. This is not in the notes, Ethan, or Meg, sorry. But we were looking at the night sky, and there were lots of little children in the event where I was. And one little girl said, "We came here before, and we saw a shooting star." So excited. How do you follow a star? Well, people throughout history, and probably even in your own family, continue to accomplish unexplainable and supposedly impossible things. So, I am amazed by the Magi, but I also accept that they spent their life studying under the guidance of master teachers, possibly even handing down from generation to generation. So when their moment came, they were ready. The story of the Magi is just one seemingly impossible story of Advent. There are actually many stories. But the Magi is a good one to focus on today because it challenges our Western scientific minds by not giving us the information that we most want to know. This story forces us to accept, or at least consider, some possibilities that are completely outside the ordinary, superficial, daily routine of our lives. The story of the Magi invites us to wonder, to reflect on what is real, and to ask some questions about ourselves and our lives, and the stars that we're following, the messages we're listening to, and the meaning we hope to discover. So let me read the brief story of the Magi as it's recorded in Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. So if you have your phone or a Bible, you can look that up. I'm looking it up too, so. Okay, Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him." Now when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Now when the king is not happy, then the whole city is unhappy, right? So, verse 4. When he had called together all the peoples chief priests, and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem, in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. The prophet said, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So then Herod, verse 7, called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and he said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I may go also and worship him. After they had heard the king, they went on their way. And the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures, and they presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Now let me ask you, what is missing from this story that you would like to know? Like, who are they? How many are they? Where did they come from? You know, there's different ideas. Some people say they came from Korea. Some say they came from India. Most people think they probably came from Persia. But they're different places. Where did they come from? How long did it take? Well, why didn't Herod assign somebody to go with them? Why did Herod's people seem to know about the prophecies, but they didn't seem to care too much about checking it out? How can you follow a star? Did the star move? Was it really a star? Or perhaps it was a group of angels? Could everyone see the star, or only the Magi? Maybe other people could have followed the same star if they had known about it. Maybe only the Magi needed to know. And Mary and Joseph told the disciples, and the disciples wrote it down for us. And we can choose to accept it with wonder or not. Later this week, maybe this afternoon, read that story again. If you stop to think about it, it opens up limitless possibilities about spiritual realities and God's work in the world. Your life and mine will never be the same if all we do this Advent is reflect deeply on the Magi, this story, God's love for them. Who were they? And this starry message that went out across time and space. The mystery of ancient prophecies realized in real time. The tragedy of religious leaders in Jerusalem who had the right information. They had a unique, once-in-a-lifetime visit from mysterious kings from the Orient. And yet they talked and acted as if their superficial lives were all that really mattered. Just down the mountainside, a baby had been born, history was being rewritten, the cosmic king of the universe had chosen to put on flesh, God with skin, Emmanuel, the prophet said, a dependent baby. Who could possibly know the significance or even begin to understand? So, probably it is too much to ask of anyone that we would understand the meaning of cosmic events, or that we try to interpret the incarnation, God becoming man, or that we even remember the prophecies or try to study the stars. But Advent still comes as a quiet invitation, a season for reflection, for realignment, for asking myself, what is real in my life? What spiritual realities are holding me together? Do I really believe that this baby Jesus was born Emmanuel, God with us? God with us, among us, leading, shepherding, guiding? Emmanuel. You know, Christmas is coming. But Christmas, the date, it's only significant because of Emmanuel. The Magi set everything else aside to go and greet the newborn King. And Advent invites you and me to make some time to reflect, to realign ourselves with the spiritual reality that Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us, a real person, a real connection, a real purpose, and a future that lies ahead. So that's the beginning of this series for Advent. So come back next week and we'll continue. Let's pray. So again, Heavenly Father, we may have great faith or we may have very little faith, and we may have thought about the Magi and maybe we never really have. And they seem far away, and it almost feels like a story for children in the midst of our busy, anxious lives and the problems that we face just to survive and to get ahead. And yet it's a moment in time with so little information. And yet it's a story of people who studied and waited and wondered, and their whole reality changed when they chose to believe that that star in the sky was leading them to a Messiah, a king. And they chose to put their trust in that sign and in that baby rather than the powerful king in Jerusalem who was inviting them back for dinner. And so, Lord, in our busy lives, give us the strength and the courage and the wonder to open our eyes, to open our hearts and our minds, and in this busy season, to look for you in this space all around us. Guide each person who humbly looks to you for help. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.